Hey everyone, this is Stephen KC Railpan here, and welcome to another model railroading video, because this is actually one of the most requested videos that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and then I know that some of you guys have been requesting me, so here it is. This is going to be a video of my collection as of July of 2022. This is all the locomotives I have on my roster right now. So first off, we're going to start off with my BNSF locomotives, because I got quite a number of them. So I lined them up. I lined up the EMDs up first, and then the GEs. So first starting off is this one, 2344. This is a Bachmann GP38-2. This actually started off with as a CSX YN2 GP38, but I just bought a new shell, and then I still have the CSX shell with me, but it's pretty nice, and I'm actually really glad with how Bachmann did some improvements on it. You know, as you can see, it's got the windshield wipers molded on, and even though it's not prototypically correct, but it's still a nice locomotive. Next up right here is a Bachmann GP40 locomotive. This is a custom patch that I did. It's not the best work I've did. I mean, it's pretty hard to get the road number boards on, and patchwork I did the best I could. So. And in real life, these are known as GP40Ms, so I custom patched it, took off the old BN, and then put decals on it. So that's that. Next is a Scaletrains Operator, SD40-2, 1938. So this is actually a pretty interesting one. This is actually probably my first H3 SD40-2. I got this possibly back in like 2017, I think. It's a pretty nice locomotive that I usually use for to run like locals and such on the layout. It's very nice, and then also the horn I relocated it right there to match the prototype, because that's what BNSF locomotives have these days. So there's that. Next is a Scaletrains Rivet Counter SD4-2 number 7035. This one is actually how it was probably before the SD4-2s were renumbered, because they had to make room for the ES44s. So I got this. There are plans I might try to renumber this locomotive at some point, so that way I can get it running again, because it's a very stunning locomotive. It's got lots of good details and all that, being the rivet counter. And next up is my SD60M, which is the XBN unit number 1457. This is one I actually renumbered and patched. It started off as just BN on it, and then I just put number board. Putting on the number boards is actually pretty easy on this one. I didn't have any issue, and as you can see, it has no ditch lights on it, but still runs very nice. Next up is an Athearn Genesis SD70 Mac, another XBN unit. This one's actually one of the most surprising ones I got, because you can see it didn't come with MU hoses or trailing hoses and all that. But it's still a pretty good runner. I mean, I run it. I don't run it too often, but I run it at times. It's still a pretty nice locomotive. And then next up, the last EMD for BNSF I have is the SD78 9271. This is actually one I've had possibly when I was going back to high school. So apparently, because one time this locomotive, the motor burned out and then it wouldn't run, so I put a new motor in it and it runs perfectly fine. And you can see some detail parts broken off, because it's an old engine and I've had this since high school, and it still runs pretty good. I mean, I like to use it. Yeah. Unlike any other trains I pull, like grain, mixed freight, anything. So that. Now we're gonna move on to the GEs. This first up is this B40-8. It's a Walters train line. It's number 580 that I custom renumbered. Renumbering on it was pretty easy, because I renumbered it since BNSF had renumbered their B40-8s, because the A600s are either going to be the Aces, possibly the Aces, I'm not too sure on it yet, so I think I did a pretty good job renumbering it, even though the zero is kind of a little bit crooked and all that. But this one, and the next one's another B40-8. This is an Atlas Silver Series. This is actually, I think I did the best patchwork on it, as you can see. 577, because basically I ordered this off of Switchline decals, because since they had the 577, so I thought I might as well get one. Even though it's sad to hear, because recently I heard that Switchline decals decided to close their shop, so it was really sad for them to do that. But anyways, I really admire their decals, and I really don't mind the headlights being cab mounted, like, because I know they're low mounted compared on the X Santa Fe B40-8s, but I'm still gonna keep it that way. Next up is an Atlas, not Atlas, this is a Walthers mainline B40-8W that I renumbered. It was number 574, but I renumbered it to 554 because I believe that the B40-8W 574 got sold off. So then I renumbered it because 554 is one of the few remaining B40-8W still in the Santa Fe War Bonnet paint. So I think this is actually I did a pretty good patch job on it. There's that. Next is an Athlon Ready to Roll ATSF-9, number 648 that I custom patched. Because basically BNSF never renumbered their Santa Fe -9, so they just kept the original run numbers but just add the BNSF patches. I put the white one because according to some images I looked up, 648 has this style of font of the BNSF patches, so there's that. This locomotive is currently out of service because the motor probably blew out and I need to get a new motor and also a new jumper for it because I put the spare jumper in my CPA C4400. If you haven't seen the Will It Run video, that's why I used it. So there's that. Moving on is the Scaletrains Rivet Counter BNSF-9, which is an X Santa Fe unit. This is part of the first run of the -9s. And basically it didn't come with a patch, so I just patched it myself, and there it is. Because in real life I've seen the 699 a couple times, and this is one of the few Santa Fe -9s that had the PTC on it. So, even though I don't have the PTC installed, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to install it sometime in the future. But this is a pretty interesting locomotive. Really glad with it. It's got, MBU hoses and all that. Low mounted ditch lights. Very nice locomotive. Next up is a BNSF fake bonnet, number 681. Because I think the real one had the larger letters, because this one has the smaller letters, like what the 7700 series and then 4700 to 4719 have. So, because I think if I remember, 681 didn't get involved in an accident sometime before, but then it still remained it, but eventually has the larger letters in real life. So this is actually a pretty nice locomotive. I've had this since I was like going back to high school. Pretty nice locomotive and runs great, but I just need to get a new motor for it and then it should be ready to go. Next up is BNSF 1096, another Athlon Ready to Roll unit. This is actually a former H1 unit, so basically it was formerly an H1, but it was repainted H3. I'm not sure when this locomotive was wrecked or somewhere, but still a nice locomotive, because I think I got this probably for my birthday, but I forgot when was it, but it's pretty nice. Yeah, so I got these two Athlon Ready to Roll, another one Athlon, and moving on. And now the next up are two Scaletrains Rivet Counter -9s in the H2 scheme. I got 4313 and 4593. This one I actually got like when Scaletrains first announced the -9s. They had already the released ones, like I think they had NS and BNSF, so I was able to get this one, and it runs very good, nice. And it's one of the greatest locomotives that Scaletrains has done, because you can see it's got the older coupler, and this one has the black coupler. These are pretty interesting locomotives. I'm really glad that Scaletrains was able to produce the -9s, and they actually are one really good runners. So, very satisfied with these. And the next is 7640, which is an Intermountain BNSF ES44DC. I think I've had this probably when I was I got this when I was in my junior year in high school. It's a pretty nice locomotive. basically, it's, as you can see, it's missing the front handrails, because basically this engine has been sitting in storage for a while, and I finally restored it, and it runs pretty good because I run it on DCC mode with some of my Bachmann NS Heritage units, so it runs pretty nice. So it's a pretty interesting locomotive. I'm really glad with how it turned out. And then next up, I have two Scaletrains Rivet Counter ES4 for ACs. This one is 5831, which is like a, I believe this is like their special run they did. So, because when they announced this, I was like, oh, I really would love to have this. And then, because whether if you run Foreign Power or basically you want to run Morlock BNSF, so here's this, the 5831. It's a very stunning locomotive. I'm really glad with how it turned out, because basically it's as delivered, so it doesn't have PTC on it. So, there's that. Now moving on is 6163. This is the 25th anniversary unit. So, this is actually probably my favorite BNSF locomotive that I have on the layout, because I really admire the 25th anniversary locomotives, and then this one is absolutely very stunning. I'm glad that Scaletrains did a good job on this. This is very, very nice indeed. And it's got lots of good details, and you can see the front says 25th anniversary. Very nice in detail. And then here is an ES44C4, number 8399. This is a Walters mainline. This is actually probably a pretty nice locomotive, even though it doesn't have much detail on it. But anyways, I ordered this off of Train World once, and this is actually, it's a pretty good runner. Runs absolutely amazing and very nice. And then following that is, then I have this locomotive. I'll bring this up. This is a Scaletrains Rivet Counter ES44C4, number 4232. It's one of the Tier 4 credit units. That was, I believe this one was built in 2016. So, it's very nice. It's, it's got, I love the PTC antennas they put on, and absolutely very stunning details. It's a very nice locomotive. And then here are three Scaletrains Rivet Counter Tier 4s. I have them, I got 3914, 3797, and then 3743. These are all of the Scaletrains Tier 4 GEVOs, ET44C4s. Absolutely very nice locomotives. It's got, you can see that. And then lastly is an Intermountain ET44C4 number 3888. This locomotive is actually a pretty nice locomotive. I got it for a good deal, like $149.99 for DCC equipped, but apparently this locomotive I took off the couplers because it's not been running lately, and I was thinking I might have to send this to Intermountain to get it fixed one day, or I'll just have it sit in storage for a while. So, anyways, that's basically all the BNSF locomotives I currently have on the layout. So now we'll be moving on to my next roster of locomotives. Next up on the roster are all my Union Pacific locomotives I'd like to share with you guys. So first up right here is an Athlone Roundhouse AC400 number 6566. This is actually a locomotive I got for Christmas, probably last year, for Christmas 2021. It's actually a pretty neat locomotive, even though this locomotive is doesn't have much detail, doesn't have PTC, and the horn is not correct. It looks like a RS3L, but these had K38 LAs or K3 HAs on them. But it's a pretty nice locomotive. I do use this locomotive a lot for DPU service, rear DPUs, mid DPUs, and it runs really well as a DPU, because I think Athlone Roundhouse locomotives run pretty well if you run them as DPUs and such, especially for a DC layout. So this is pretty decent. And before I let you guys know, this is not an ex-CNW unit, because the CNWs are, I think, are the 6701 through 6720 something. I just gotta do some research on this, but this is actually just a regular UP AC400 that was just freshly came out from Erie, Pennsylvania, back in the 90s or so. But it's pretty nice. but it's a repainted. So next up, I have two Walthers Mainline ES44 ACs. I got 7470, 7496. These are actually pretty decent models, like from Walthers Mainline. I'm actually really impressed with them. Because, you know, even though it does have details on them, even though being a Walthers Mainline, they're budget friendly, but they run very nice, and I'm very glad I got a pair of these. I might think about getting more Gevos sometimes, either more Walthers Mainline or maybe the Scale Trains ones, if I can. These are absolutely very nice. And then next up is another Walthers Mainline locomotive, SD70 Ace, number 8519. This is actually has the Thunder cab, but pretty sure, but if you look carefully, you can, here, let me zoom in. You can see that. See this right here. Molding right here. It looks a bit like it's probably came from a NS SD78, but it really didn't matter. I mean, even though it's not prototypically correct, as I can show you, you can see, since it's numbered 8519, it's got the Building America. That style is not correct. That's supposed to be like usually on the A300s and such. But still really decent looking locomotive. It's got the yellow steel stripe. Because all the ones I have are all in the yellow steel stripe, which is what UP logos have right now. Because I believe that this came a thing somewhere around the 2010s, I think, when UP started adding those instead of getting rid of the red stills. Because I did hear that Walthers Mainline did announce that they are announcing the Thundercap UP Aces, but with the red steel stripe. And they also have ones with the late version ones with the headlights on the nose mounted, which is pretty nice, which is like the more modernized one. But I might think about getting more Aces or Gevos in the future. Next up I have is the George Bush unit. This is also Walthers Mainline. Because the one thing about it is that I heard that the Walthers Mainline UP4141 is a lot more expensive, costs a little bit more money than compared to the other ones, because it has some details already installed, like the grab irons, the steps, and all that pre-installed already. I can show you the back side too, and this, you can see same with the back side as well. This is actually a pretty cool model, and I actually picked this up because I've known the fact that back in like 2018 when I heard about that, then when President George Bush passed away, this locomotive led the funeral train along with the SD70 AH 9096. It was pretty nice to see it back up and running again, but unfortunately, as of now, 4141 is now retired and now going to be used as a display locomotive. But even though those locomotives may not be on the rails today, but it's still decent to have this on my layout. So the next up I have is an Athearn Genesis SD70 AH. Because you've been wondering, what does AH mean? AH basically means it's an ace, but it's much heavier than a regular ace. So this is actually a locomotive. I think this was former UP 9026, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying my best to remember. But this is actually pretty much the best UP locomotive I have. One of the best ones. It's very stunning. And Athearn did a really good job on it. It's got really nice headlights and cab interior and all that. PTC. Absolutely very nice. And I haven't seen this unit for about a year now, because I only caught it one time when I was on the Kansas sub, which is with my friend. I was with my friend Jack Rail Fanning Productions, and he took me there, and then we got to see 1943 on the Kansas sub, even during the snowy weather back in February. But it was well worth it. It was on the day before the Super Bowl, which was when the Chiefs and the Buccaneers faced, but unfortunately the Buccaneers won, which I was pretty saddened about. But it was still a really nice treat to catch 1943 on the day before Super Bowl Sunday, which is as you know, Chiefs versus the Buccaneers. But anyways, this is still pretty decent. And last but not least, for the newest addition to my layout, and is obviously this is actually, I'm very pleased with this one. This is the Athearn Genesis 2.0 SD78, the the Missouri, Kansas, Texas Heritage Unit number 1988. This is actually a very stunning locomotive that I recently picked that has arrived on my layout. Like, it's a very nice looking locomotive. I'm really glad with this. Just look at that detail wise. Absolutely amazing. Because I picked this one up because this was my first UP Heritage unit I've seen in person. Because I caught this like back in my childhood years. And I've seen it like twice in my childhood years, and then I caught it again in my high school year. But I haven't seen it in a couple years. But I really want to see this locomotive in person again, because if I ever get the chance, because this is absolutely very stunning. Lots of good details on it, and this is actually the 2017 repaint of it. So this was like, it was basically repainted after knowing that the paint was peeling, and then needed the new coat of Heritage paint. So I'm actually really glad with how this turned out. And if you haven't seen the review video of it, you can check that out. It's absolutely very stunning. It's a perfect locomotive for any modern UP layouts. So, yeah. So, there's all my UP locomotives. I have a total of 7 so far. Like, I got 4 in the regular paints, and then 3 special ones. So, yeah. So now, we'll be moving on to my next set of locomotives. Alright, so moving on. So here are my Norfolk Southern locomotives. I got quite a number of them. So first off are 2 Bachmann GP50 high hoods. These are actually really nice locomotives, even though for being like budget friendly, because you can know. Basically what I did to them, I just renumbered them by putting like patches, but they're not decals, I just basically cut out papers on them, and then I did the same on the number boards. Very nice. I also painted their handrails to match the prototype. There's that. And then next up is a Bachmann GP40. This is actually one of the new releases. This is 3053, the Operation Lifesaver unit. This is actually pretty much like one of my favorite NS I have, like for 4-axle power. And next up is a Atlas Silver Series GP30-2, 5642. Known as the Training First Responders unit. This is actually a pretty decent locomotive. I mean, though, nice details. I mean, K-pop LA at the back, I've seen on the prototype, air conditioner on top, or something on the top, and some dome of some sort. But it doesn't have ditch lights, but still a nice locomotive. I can run this like on the safety trains or on locals and all that. Next is a SD40-2 Bachmann number 6093. Which this is an X and a W unit, which is a pretty decent locomotive. And also 5642, I think, is my only X Penn Central unit I have, because according to research, 3053 isn't X Penn Central. 5642 was a former Penn Central. So, doing that. And then we got another SD4-2. This is a Scale Trains Rivet Counter unit. This is actually a pretty decent model. I mean, Scale Trains did a great job on this with the Admiral cab. It's actually very stunning. And then here is a Walters Mainline SD60 standard cab, 6697. This is actually a pretty decent model, and I'm glad I got this for Christmas a couple years ago. But I still run it a few times, even though NS doesn't have their SD60s anymore because they've been retired and such. And then right here is a Walters Mainline SD70 Ace, which is the Penn Central Heritage unit. I picked up this one because this was actually my very first NS Heritage unit I've seen in person. And it's a pretty decent locomotive, and I'm actually glad with how it turned out, even though it doesn't have much detail for being a Walters Mainline unit. Next up I have is NS 1069, the Virginian Heritage unit. This is Athearn Genesis. I got this one because Virginian is actually a pretty interesting Heritage unit, because I love the paint scheme on it, and it's very nice. And basically when it came in, it has swappable roofs. You can choose the one with PTC or how it is as delivered. So I chose it to as delivered. I mean, to how it is right now with PTC, because I've seen this unit twice already, and it's very nice. I love the 1069, being one of my favorite NS Heritage units. And then next up right here I have our 2 SD60s Athearn Genesis. I was actually very stunned how that when Athearn announced that they're doing the ST60Es, and these are absolutely very stunning looking ones because they're both in the special schemes because they got 911, the honoring first responders, and 6920, the honoring our veterans unit. So I picked up these. These are actually really nice, and this one I actually got for a pretty good deal, like from Lombard Hobbies. I got it for about $139.99, which was probably the best deal for any Athearn Genesis locomotive. So I picked it up, and there it is. Absolutely very nice. Next is the Walters Mainline SD78 1033. This is actually a pretty decent locomotive. I mean, I love Walters Mainline locomotives, even though they're budget friendly and all that, but I don't mind it. It's pretty nice. And now we have Athearn Genesis SD70 ACU, which are rebuilt from SD90 Max. This one's actually probably one of my most expensive locomotives I have on the layout. I mean, it's very nicely detailed. It's got absolutely amazing, and it actually has pretty good pulling power as well. So that's impressive. And then here I have two Scaletrain C40-9s. This one's the as delivered, right here, but it means it doesn't have the horse head. And this one is the repaint, which is the more modernized one. So these are actually very nice locomotives. Their Scaletrains did a good job, and I love how this one, the repaint, the logo is a little bit upwards a bit. And next one, here's another C40-9, but this is an Athearn Genesis, which I got for Christmas last year. And I just took off the McHenry couplers and put KDs, because KDs are proven to be really good couplers. So very nice. And you can see, if you look on the top, these are all different from each other, depending on variants. Next up, I have our two Scaletrain Rivet Counter C39-8s. These are actually pretty good locomotives, even though I heard that the Scaletrain C39-8 hasn't been selling very well, so it looks like they won't be doing a run of these for quite a while now. But anyways, these are still great locomotives, because the C39-8 is a pretty interesting locomotive, even though it didn't perform well in service. But anyways, I'm really glad I was able to have two of these. There's that. Next is an ex-Conrail C40-8W, number 8376, Atlas Silver Series. Very nice locomotive, because I love seeing the C40-9s every time I'm out route, and even though you don't see them anymore because they've been retired, some scrapped, some sold, and all that. But anyways, now moving on, I got three Scaletrains -9s. Two are the more rivet counters, one's an operator. This one is an operator. You can see it's got the nose headlight. And the others are rivet counters. Like this one's the horse head with how it looks as of now. PTC. And this one is the as delivered -9, without the horse head, no PTC. But anyways, they're still nice. I mean, it's still good to have these, even though for modern railroading. And here is a Walters Mainline ES44AC 8041. It's a pretty decent model. I mean, I put the PTC up front, on top. It's pretty nice, and has the black number boards, because I think it doesn't have it right anymore, but still nice. And here is my Monongahela Heritage Unit, number 8025. This is actually a pretty interesting locomotive. I got this probably since high school, I think. But it's a pretty nice model. It doesn't have, it's basically DC equipped, but no sound. But anyways, it's still a decent model. I mean, I have caught the real one when I was on my Pennsylvania vacation in Homestead, Pennsylvania. But it's very nice detail. And here are my Bachmann Heritage units. These are, I got Conrail and Lehigh Valley, both ES44ACs. They're very nice locomotives. The sounds are pretty decent, and the Conrail one has the working ditch lights. Well, Lehigh Valley doesn't, because Conrail's in the second run, Lehigh Valley in the first run. But they're really nice. Next right here is an Athearn Roundhouse AC44C6M, number 4059. It's a pretty nice locomotive, because I've seen you probably see C6Ms a lot on NS now, but so I had to pick one up, even though basically it has the nose headlight, which doesn't really bother me that much. Next is the Scaletrain Rivet Counter ES4AC 8134. This is actually a really nice locomotive, even though it's got this. These are as delivered, so basically, because in the second run they have one in the with PTC, but this is actually pretty stunning. I like to run this a lot. Next one are two Scoutrange Rivet Counter ET44 ACs, which I got 3607 and 3658. Probably one of my favorite models that Scoutrange has done is the Tier 4 Jivas. So I have two of them here. They run really nice. And the 3607 had been in storage for some time, but I was able to fix the lights and runs perfectly. Then next is an Athearn Roundhouse AC4 C6M, the Sonic Bonnet 4001. Pretty nice locomotive, but even though the headlight's in the wrong location to the mind. And also, then here is an MTH ES4AC Norfolk and Western. Very nice locomotive, and it runs really well with my locomotives. But sometimes the ditch lights light up on both sides, which isn't really a big problem. I don't really mind it. And the last but not least is the. And I also have this one. This is a Walters Mainline ES4AC Pennsylvania Heritage Unit, because this was my most recent catch I've seen in person. But this actually, I really like this scheme. It's very stunning. And so I was able to get one because I know the Pennsylvania will sell out really fast, so I had to get one. And I also have one more right here, because as you can see there's not enough space. So this is a Bachmann Spectrum C40-8. Even though it's a pretty nice locomotive, because when I first got it, had horn hooks, but then I put Easy Make couplers on it. It's pretty nice, and I put a horn, Details West horn, which is an RS5T on it, but still nice. But I might make this become a short line sometime in the future, but who knows what I'll do. So, anyways, that's basically all my NS locomotives I have. So, yep. So, moving on. Alright, next we will look at my CSX locomotives. So first off, I have this SD40-2 in the gray stealth scheme. This is actually probably one of my favorite schemes that CSX has done. I just love the paint on it. It looks absolutely stunning. Even though it's not really modern, but I think it's pretty nice. And so, really nice. And then next is a CSX SD40-3, which is the SpongeBob Square Cab scheme. I think Scoutrange was the only manufacturer that makes these. So it's very nice. It's got the details, ditch lights, handrails, and look at that cab. Very nicely done. Just absolutely nice. So, yeah. So next I have is an Atlas Silver Series C40-8. So CSX. It's in the YN3 repaint. It's a very nice locomotive. I got this at a train show back in 2019, but it's been a while since I've been to train shows. But I look forward to going back to more of them in the future. It's pretty nice. It's got lots of details. It's got the horn, correct horn, K5LA, and all that. And then next I have our two Athearn AC400s. This is a ready to roll, and this one's a roundhouse. This one I actually ordered off eBay, which, you know, basically it's pretty nice, but even though it's got the boxcar logos, because it's like right there, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to remove this decal and put the regular YN CSX one, because the real one I don't think it has the boxcar logo, but anyway, it's still a decent locomotive. And the next one, the roundhouse, is number 506. This is my only YN2 locomotive. It's a very nice, decent model, because I love YN2. And I use this a lot for, like, you know, on DPUs, and because Athearn Roundhouse locomotives are perfect for DPU services. So I got those. Next up is a Walters Mainline ES44AH, number 975. This is actually a pretty nice locomotive, because I love the boxcar logos, because I've seen quite a number of those in the past, and these are absolutely very nice. Not many detail, but it doesn't matter to me. So that's that. Next I got two Scoutrange Rivet Counter ES44AHs. This is number 884, which basically this one's actually is in the YN3. This is probably, like, I believe built in 2008, I think. But this is actually a stunning locomotive. Very stunning. Absolutely nice. And this one is actually probably the best one I have. 3194 Spirit of Law Enforcement, because this one I pre-ordered that came with the white and the red and blue ditch lights. It's actually very nice, and I think I had these ditch lights when it was first rolled out, but unfortunately they were changed to clear ditch lights. And it's pretty nice. It's got the RS5T horn, which is correct. Absolutely stunning. Very nice. And then here are two Tier 4 Jibos, ET44AHs. One I have is 3440, which is another Spirit unit, Spirit of Ravenna. Absolutely very nice detail. And this is an operator, because this is actually one of the first CSX local ones I got, and then it's pretty nice. They run perfectly together, and I love the scale trains because they absolutely are they actually run very nice, and they have incredible pulling power. So yeah, let me show you all the CSX. So yeah, those are all the CSX locomotives that I use to like run as foreign power and all that. So yeah, so moving on. Alright, so now we will be focusing on my KCS locomotives. So right now this is my only KCS EMD I have. This is a Atlas Trainman Silver Series. This is a GP30-2 number 2031. Pretty interesting locomotive I can use on like on the transfers or locals, whenever like KCS and CP transfers. It's a pretty nice, or I can just put them on like on the mixed freights, because KCS uses some Jeeps on their mixed freights. You can find quite a number of those. Next up is an Atlas Roundhouse. This is a KCS AC400 Grey Ghost. So this is actually my only Grey Ghost I have. This is actually a pretty interesting locomotive. I've had this probably since 2017, I think. And then basically when I remember the motor burned out, so I had to put a new motor in it, and it runs pretty nice. It's very nicely detailed too. You can see, love that Grey Ghost detailing. And as you know, the horn's not correct. I'm supposed to put like a K5LA on it. So there's that. And next up is a Scaletrains Rivet Counter ES44AC number KCS 4777. This is actually one of the ones I found like possibly online from White Rose Hobbies, and they had one last one, so I picked up the last one. That's DCC ready. So there's that. It's very pretty stunning. Absolutely. So I can run this a lot with my KCS trains, or just run as foreign power. There's that. And the next one is another ES44AC, but this is a Walters mainline, number 4803. So it's another locomotive I have, because you can see I don't mind having lots of ES44s or any Jibos in general. It's very, even though it has lack of detail, but I don't mind it. Pretty cheap locomotive. And the next one is a Scaletrains ET44AC. This is a Tier 4 Jibo, Scaletrains. This is actually probably one of the greatest models, because I got number 5000, which is the prototype. It's very stunning. I even heard that this was actually one of the best-selling road numbers, so I was able to pre-order one, and there it is. It's very nice indeed. I don't think I've seen the real 5000 before, but I have seen Tier 4 Jibos in general. It's absolutely really nice. So there it is. Basically, that's my KCS roster, because I know I don't have much, just because KCS, like white calves, like aces and all that, are really hard to find. So that's basically my KCS roster. So alright, so moving on. Alright, so now I will show off my Canadian Pacific roster. So first off, I have is a Bachmann GP38-2, which I basically ordered a shell, which this formerly belonged to my CN one, but I took that off and put the CP shell on it, because it's a pretty nice scheme. It's basically the Action Red, or basically the Pac-Man scheme, which is what some people call it. But it's a pretty nice scheme, and runs very nice. And I can use this for like transfer trains and all that. And then another one I have is this Scaletrains Operator SD40-2 5423. This is a SD4-2. It's a pretty nice logo. This is actually probably my favorite CP scheme, the Twin Flag scheme. So I actually really like this a lot. But I believe this one is now repainted into the Golden Beaver, and the 5423 is retired and probably sold to National Rail Equipment. But I'm not sure where it went now. But I really like it a lot. And this one right here is an Athearn Genesis SD70 ACU, which I believe this was my first locomotive of 2022 I got. It's very nice. You can see got lots of good detail with the PTC, everything. Amazing about it. So I have 3 EMDs. Now we'll move on to the GEs. So the first one I have is an Athearn Ready to Roll AC400. This is actually a used locomotive that I got from eBay, and it had a TCS decoder in it, but when I first ran it, it didn't run really well. And so I tried to do some maintenance on it, and then I removed the TCS decoder and then put it like a jumper, and it runs absolutely really nice now. Because if you haven't seen the Willow run, you should check it out. And then here is my Athearn Roundhouse AC400, but this is a AC400 rebuild known as the AC44 CWM. It's not really prototypically accurate because you can see it doesn't have the 4-window cab, and the door is supposed to be on the left side. So anyways, it's still a pretty nice locomotive. I use this for like DPUs and such, but it runs very nice. Next up is an Athearn Genesis ES44AC 8740. This is actually probably one of the best CPs I have besides the ACU. It has incredible pulling power. I can use this to run like mixed freights or oil trains or anything. But it's got the PTC on the top. It's a very stunning locomotive. And this one is a Walters Mainline ES44 AC, which I got this one for my birthday. Probably for my 24th or somewhere, but I forgot. But even though I'm not made detail, but it doesn't matter to me. But so anyways, that basically marks up my CP roster. And also if you're wondering about the Sioux line, stay tuned for that one some part in the video. Alright, so now I will show you guys all my CN locomotives I have. I don't really have much, but we'll begin. So first off is this is a Skeletrains operator unit, number 3204. This is actually a pretty interesting unit because I love how it has the little emblem right here, and that's a really stunning, because even though it's not prototypically correct, because you know CN locomotives do not have the window on the door right here. Because I know the only ones that do are the XBNSF C40-8Ws for the Gs, as far as I know. And then next is a rivet counter one, CN3100. This is actually a pretty decent locomotive because it's got all kinds of good detail on it. It's got the DPU light right here. Absolutely super stunning. So I got 2 Skeletrains locomotives, and the next one is a Walters Mainline locomotive. This is even though they said it's an ace, but I'm going to classify this as an M-2 because that's, in real life, 8017 is an M-2. So this would actually be considered a CN SD70 M-2. Very stunning. So it's actually an older one, so it's basically like the Thunder Cab. But it's very nice. I mean, so as you can see, I don't really have much CN. I only got 3 of them. And if you would count the BC rail, I would count the BC rail, but stay tuned for that one sometime later on in the video. Alright, so here are my lease units on my roster. So first off, I have the Skeletrains Rivet Counter SD4-2. This is an EMD lease unit, and also a former Milwaukee Road unit. This is actually a pretty interesting scheme because I remember these were on lease with BN for quite some time, and I really love the blue and the white scheme on this because it's very absolutely stunning. You can see horn, RS3L, the white, and it's got a shorter fuel tank. You can see, absolutely very nice. Because when Skeletrains first did this, I had to pre-order one because this is actually probably one of my favorite leasing schemes. because I do run this locomotive at sometimes, but it still runs. It's a very nice runner, and it runs very good. And then next up is an Athearn Roundhouse GP38-2 CFX414. This is actually a pretty nice locomotive. I really love the blue on this because, you know, the blue, I always think the blue looks very interesting. So it's got that. It doesn't have come the snowplow, but I also put KDs on it. So pretty nice. And this is a Scaletrains Operator SD45 locomotive, but in real life they're considered as SD40M-2s, because meaning they're SD45 rebuilds. So I would actually, to me, this would actually be an SD40M-2, and because that's how they were referred in real life. So even though this is only operator, but still nice, because, you know, if they did it in rivet counter, it would require like a lot of hard work and such for Scaletrains. So moving on, this is actually a custom patch. This is a PRLX SD40-2 in XBN unit. This is actually a pretty. I didn't do the best work on it because, you know, the PRLX is a little bit off, but I still did the best I could, and I think it turned out pretty nice, and it could be a perfect lease unit. Look at that. And then the last one, my only GE lease unit, is the City Rail ES44 AC 1349. This is actually, I got this because after hearing that BNSF leased them, but then BNSF no longer leases them now, and that now, as of now, they are now part of the CN roster. So there's that. It's not, I left it untouched, but I'm not sure if I'm thinking about patching it to CN sometime in the future, but who knows. So there it is. I have only 5 of the leasing units, so moving on. Alright, so now here are all my fallen flags, the one, especially like the ones that I have not patched that are out. So first up I have is a Suline GP40. This is actually was something I ordered from the Bachmann parts store. I ordered the full chassis and then the shell itself, and there it is. So I basically got it for just like standard DC and all that. It's a pretty nice locomotive. I can run this on like the CP transfers and all that. Next up is a Scaletrains Operator SD40-2. As you can see, the handrails are a bit out of place, but I'll fix that later because this is not patched yet, but I'll still have this patched sometime in the future and then renumber it. Next up is a Bachmann B23-7 Santa Fe that's not patched, which this I was thinking about making this like a little my short line railroad someday if I can get some custom decals for it. It's a pretty nice basic locomotive and all that. Next, then here are all my Conrails. First up I have is an SD40-2 Scaletrains Operator. It's a pretty decent locomotive because I just love the Conrail blue and it's pretty nicely detailed, even though it has no details on it. Next is an SD60M, which is a Walters mainline. Very nice locomotive. I always wanted one of these, and I think this is actually a pretty cool paint scheme. And very, very nice. Next is a GP40. This is actually unpowered because the motor burned out, but maybe I could think about getting another powered chassis from Bachmann parts, and then get it back up and running again, and also get a new shell because this shell is pretty old. I've had this locomotive for a very long time, ever since I began model railroading. And here is another Bachmann locomotive, B23-7, number 1991. Pretty nice locomotive. It's a basic, so even though I don't run it much, but I might make this part of my short line railroad someday, soon. And next is a Scaletrains Rivet Counter C39-8. This is a pretty decent locomotive because I love the C39-8s because I think they look the best on Conrail. But man, this is very nice. Next is an Atlas Silver Series C40-8 Conrail quality, because in case you don't know, Conrail only had 3 of these painted in the Conrail quality, while the rest are in the can opener scheme. But it's a pretty nice locomotive, and maybe I could have this patched to either NS or CSX. But if I could do NS, it has to be 8313, because that was the only Conrail quality -8 that Stern had that was on NS. Next up I have is a Rio Grande SD40 T-2, which is very nice looking locomotive. And this I got as an inspiration because I remembered visiting the Colorado Railroad Museum when I was young, going back to like 6 years old. But so I got this one, but even though the road number they have is 5401, that's preserved there. Pretty nice locomotive, but I might make this one probably a short line one day. Next up is a Southern Pacific Dash 9 Scout Operator. Pretty nice locomotive, and I do run this a few on occasions, like on UP mainline trains. It's a very stunning locomotive. And then next up is a SP B39-8E, which I got this at my local train store. It runs pretty nice, and there's a possible chance I might make this a short line one day. Because, you know, I haven't. And then last fallen flag is the BC Rail Dash 9. This is actually a pretty nice locomotive, and I got this because, you know, I've seen a couple BC rails before, and if I remember, I've seen 46, 48 multiple times in BC Rail. So there's that. It's pretty nice. I'll run this as foreign power and the layout and all that. So anyways, that's all my fallen flags I have. So let's move on. Alright, so right here as part of my locomotive roster is my one and only steam engine. This is actually a steam engine that my family once got for me, like my aunt and uncle got back in my probably my middle school year. I've had this for over 10 years, and I just never seem to run it that often. Just because, you know, I've been getting like modern diesel power, you know, Dash 9s, Jeebos, 40-2s, and SD70s and all that. So I haven't been able to run this locomotive that often, but maybe if possible, I could run this locomotive a couple times, but I need to get some, like, maybe I could get some passenger cars for it, or even like steam era freight cars for it, because I have quite a few, but I don't have much, but I might get more of these someday. And like maybe I can convert this to like a Santa Fe steam locomotive in one day, because, you know, in the US there's a couple of Chinese steam locomotives that you find that are now been like redesigned to make them look more American like one I think there's in the tourist line in Iowa, there's a JS282 steam locomotive, because this locomotive is a JS282 steam locomotive. And like, so yeah, it's a pretty decent model, even though it has some parts missing and damaged, because, you know, I've had this for 10 years and this has been in storage for quite a while now. Haven't got the chance to run it, but hopefully I'll run it again sometime in the future. But who knows. But it's a pretty decent model. I mean, I'm really glad that my aunt and uncle actually got me this back when I was like 13 or 14 years old. But so it's still really nice, and it's actually my only steam locomotive I have on the roster. So yeah, we'll see what happens if I get like more of them, because get more like rolling stock. But you can see, I'll show you the details. You can see the piston rods are really nice. It's got a nice tender. It's also got like a headlight on the tender, which is very cool. And all that. And then there's the China Railways. So, anyways, I think this is actually a pretty stunning model, and I probably will look forward to running this on the layout if I got time to. So, alright, now, we'll be moving on now. And now lastly, here are all my Amtrak locomotives. So I only have 5 of them. So first up I have is a Dash 8 32 BHW. This is actually an Atlas Silver Series locomotive. Because when I heard that Atlas was re-announcing these, I had to get one of these, because I have seen some in person for like 500 when it was idling at Union Station on the River Runner. So it was on the Southwest sheet, but it got pulled off, and then now on the back of the River Runner. So this is actually a pretty interesting model. It runs very nice, and I can use this as like a little bit of backup power for such. So very stunning. Next up is an Athearn Ready to Roll P42 DC. This one used to be the big game train unit, but unfortunately you can see there's some scratches on it because I removed the decal. Because the real 189 doesn't have them anymore. But, and then I also put KDs on it, and it pretty nice. Not really a strong polar, but it's pretty decent. Next I have is a Kato P42DC. This is my only Kato locomotive I have currently. This is number 19. Because they also have another one that's number 203 in the Phase 5, but as you know, 203 has been repainted into the Operation Lifesaver scheme. This actually is a pretty nice locomotive. It has incredible pulling power. You can pull six of the Amtrak cars without any problem. So, and also it has marker lights, ditch lights, and all that. It's pretty nice. It's got a unique coupler. That's insane. It's also pretty heavy too. And then next up is my Athearn Genesis P42DC, which is the Phase 4 Heritage unit. This is a very stunning model. It also has incredible pulling power too, just like what the Kato does. And this logo is also very heavy. So I tried to lift it, and it's quite heavy compared to this one, which is a little bit lightweight, the Athearn. And then lastly is this Amtrak store exclusive P42DC. I believe this is an Athearn ready to roll. I ordered this off the Amtrak store because it was the only place that had them, and it was an exclusive. Because I ordered this sometime after I returned back to the model railroading hobby and such. So this is actually a pretty interesting locomotive. It does run pretty nice and all that. But even though I think 42 is stored somewhere after it was involved in an accident. But anyways, it's still a pretty stunning locomotive. So anyways, that's all the Amtrak locomotives I have. So I got all the 5 of them, the Dash 8 and 4 P42DCs. Well guys, that's going to basically conclude my entire locomotive roster as of July of 2022. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and so you guys finally got to know my current roster as of July of 2022. I will still have some more locomotives I have planned to get soon, because you know I usually got lots of free time, and I make money from my job and all that. So anyways, so I will still have some more locomotives to come, so be sure to hang on tight, and then more videos about model railroading and also rail banding videos will be coming soon. So anyways, that's gonna do it all for this video. I'll see you guys next time.